الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسل الله تعالى بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا داعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا فأما بعد فقال تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون وقال يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما وقال نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. My dear respected brothers, sisters, elders, the title of my khutbah today is Understanding Our World. And the reason I say understanding our world is because our reactions and our responses to anything don't depend on what is happening. It depends on how we understand that. Because things can be happening in ways, if you don't understand the reality of that, then you will be fooled by it. We are today living in what we call the parable of the boiled frog. And the parable of the boiled frog is that if you take a frog and put it into a pot of hot water, the frog will jump out. Immediately it will escape. But if you take the same frog and put it into a pot of water at normal room temperature, let it get used to that, and after that you light a small fire under the pot, and gradually you heat the water gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And frogs are cold-blooded animals, so the animal gets now more and more flaccid, more and more incapable of reaction until the water is boiling and the frog is boiled. And that is why it is very important for us to understand that this is the state of the Muslim Ummah today, illa mashallah. Okay. And that is the reason why we must get ourselves educated, not merely trained to make a living. Just ask yourself which books, and I don't mean your textbooks if you are in university, I don't mean the newspaper, which books have you read in the past 1 year? And you will have the answer about whether you are a boiled frog or not. Without reading and without the skills of reflective observation, introspection, and abstract conceptualization, you are totally open to being manipulated to believe and act the way that those in power want you to act. Now, if you don't know what these three terms mean, come and I will teach you. It's not osmosis. It won't happen if you walk around. You have to learn. Only real education can save us from being mentally enslaved and manipulated by the puppet masters for their benefit. There are two things that distinguish the enslaved from the free. One, the willingness to take responsibility for oneself. And two, to focus on contribution, not consumption. In one word, participation. Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned this in the hadith where he defined the ummah. Nu'man bin Bashir radiallahu anhu reported that Rasulullah ﷺ said, the example of the believers in their affection, mercy and compassion for each other is that of a body. When any limb aches, the whole body reacts with sleeplessness and fear. Muttafaqun alayhi, Bukhari wa Muslim. That is the meaning of participation. Not spectators. Get involved. We Muslims as an ummah, counting backwards from the nation states post-World War II, all the way to the Khilafah Rashida, which was our first experience of statehood for Muslims, we have lived in empire in one form or another. What is empire? One ruler with absolute power. People must obey. No participation in decision making. Change of leadership almost always violently. Fratricide, killing your brothers, was the norm and even declared legal by Suleiman al-Qanuni, the Ottoman ruler. Yet another reason to study history. Our history is the history of conquest and its economics. Though actual conquest stopped over 300 years ago, but the hangover remains. Our Muslim country economics has gone the same way. We have replaced state income from spoils of war to oil revenues. Local people never had to produce or show enterprise. They were on the dole and they remain that way. Our wealthy countries are bank accounts, not economies. We compete in building structures, not minds. Ask, for example, how many of our speakers talk about conquests and wars and bravery. How many of you watch Ertugrul like an addiction? And how many talk about social work, industry, creating products and services, invention? How many? We live in the past as if the present does not exist. I believe that we must wake up and get out of our empire mindset and realize that it may have been a glorious phase in our history, but it's over. Today, we must draw inspiration from the use of knowledge, technology, systems, markets. We must learn a whole new set of skills and contribute in new ways to be viewed as productive and contributing members of society. Power and influence are derivatives of contribution, not consumption. We must actively learn from our great history by interpreting it in the modern context. It is not about regression, it's about progress standing on the shoulder of giants. I submit to you that most of what is happening to us today is because of our isolationist, myopic, and insular attitudes. We live as if there is nobody else in the world. Let me give you some metrics. Measure for yourself. Ask, how many of us greet people first? And how many ask fatwa about whether it is permissible to say wa alaikum as-salam to a non-Muslim who says salam alaikum? Whenever they ask me that, I ask them one question. I said, who told you not to greet him first? You put yourself into this mess, now you want to come and ask fatwa. Is it halal, is it jaiz, not jaiz? Where are your akhlaq? How many of us speak the language of the country, whether it's America, whether it's wherever, France, Germany? How many of us speak the language of the country fluently enough to be able to represent ourselves in public fora? I'm not talking about speaking in Costco or Home Depot. I'm talking about being able to stand on a public platform and present yourself. How many speak the language fluently enough to do that? Even though you have lived in the country for 20, 30, 40 years. How many of us sit on school boards and other boards where all our children study, but somebody else makes decisions for them? How many of us are in local government? Just to give you an idea, Muslims came to this country recorded in 1627. In 1627, Suleiman Qanuni, Suleiman the Magnificent, was the Ottoman Emperor, and Babur had just in 1526, conquered the first battle of Panipat, and the Mughal Empire was being established. 1527, 1 year later, Muslims landed in America. From 1527 to 2004, not to that, 2000, what is it, 2024, only 4 Muslims have ever been elected to US Congress. 1527 to 2024, only 4 Muslims. How many of us volunteer for protests against different social evils like drugs and racism and gun violence and global warming and wars and nuclear weapons? How many of us participated in the Black Lives Matter marches? How many of us participated even in the pro-Palestine protests? And how many debated whether it is halal or haram to protest? How many of us vote? And how many of us debate about voting? How many of us have local people as friends? I don't mean the ABCDs or the ABCAs, American-born confused Desis or American-born confused Arabs. I'm talking about local people, African-American, Caucasian American, meaning white, and Native American. These are local people. Friends, not somebody who sells cigarettes to in your convenience store. Friends as in somebody who calls you, you call them, you consult them, they consult you, they have problems, they come to you. Friends, how many? How many of us attend jury duty? And how many of us attend local town hall meetings? I can add to this list, but I suggest you sit down seriously and add to this list. Shall I also ask you how many of us drive too fast in residential areas because we are late for Jummah? And we park on people's lawns and across their driveways? My brothers and sisters, power and influence are the result of consistent contribution, not consumption. Nobody cares what you own. They care about what we give to those in need. Please remember, understand, power comes with territory. Contribution defines territory. You want power? Contribute. Today, almost everything that is happening to us in this country and globally is because we are seen as net consumers, not contributors. To give you an example, in the 2011 motor show in Qatar, the star attraction was the Volkswagen Touareg with custom 22-inch wheels, roof rails and rough strips and other details, all plated in 24-karat gold. The Volkswagen Touareg is a high-performance vehicle, but what was on show was not engineering, was bling. Ask why. This is not only about rulers and other countries. Just look around you, look around us here in West Springfield and ask, what is the Muslim contribution to general society? I'm not talking about how much funds you raise here for Palestine. I'm saying, what is Muslim contribution to general society? People who are not Muslim. What is the answer? Isolation breeds ignorance. Ignorance inspires fear. Fear results in violence. And that is what we are seeing in different parts of the world today. Our isolationist, exclusivist, non-contributory attitude combined with the fact that we are visibly, racially, culturally, ethnically different and can't or don't communicate with local people is the ideal combination for the Islamophobic gristmill to generate hatred using the material that we contribute generously and freely. They don't have to invent anything. We give it to them. I remind you and myself, it is not a physical fight. It's an ideological, psychological battle where the dominant narrative must be countered with an experiential narrative that people can compare to, which cancels and contradicts the narrative of hate. When people see anti-Muslim things on television or social media or somebody tells them, their experience of Muslims, our manners, our communication, our contribution, our helpfulness must contradict that message. Only we can create that because it affects only us. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and action is worth 1,000,000. Only actions can drown out the cacophony of anti-Muslim propaganda, not words. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to get involved in the general community, not only with Muslims, and to work for the promotion of good and the prohibition of evil, of harm. And this applies to all good and all harm that happens in society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. Not lil Muslimin. Ukhrijat linnas. Ta'muruna bil ma'rufi wa tanhawna anil munkari wa tu'minuna billah. Allah said, you are the best community ever raised for humanity. You encourage good, you forbid evil, and you believe in Allah. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا كما أمر ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. فقال تعالى إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. My brothers and sisters and elders, there are two things that we must learn to do urgently. First, we must learn to appreciate and show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the people for what we enjoy in these lands. In this country, for example, we can dress in full Islamic costume, pray anywhere in peace, say anything we want in our sermons, eat our halal meats, insist that Pizza Hut cuts our pizza with a clean knife which is not contaminated by cutting any other kind of meat. We receive world-class medical treatment. We study and our children study at world-class universities, open to everyone, regardless of race or religion. And we have a host of other freedoms. In this country, universities have directors of spiritual welfare and they have Muslim chaplains. I am the Muslim chaplain in 2 universities. The dining halls have halal food. The university pays for prayer spaces and for prayer mats, and they host iftar parties. Our daughters can go to class in full burqa and hijab. Compare this to what happens even in Muslim countries. I don't need to elaborate, but I'm sure that all of us are well aware. Ask yourself, and I ask myself, how many times have we thanked Allah for this? How many times have we shown gratitude to the people of this country, and I'm talking about the world, wherever we go in countries like this? The second thing we must learn is how to present our culture to Westerners. For this, we must learn to communicate, learn the language and learn how to use the language. They're two different things. It is not about converting people. It's about helping people understand how Islam continues to remain as relevant and valid today as it was 14 centuries ago. It is to help them to see Islam as a solution to modern problems and a bulwark against social evils. It is to help them to see how the Islamic way will make them successful in this life while creating a society that is based on compassion, sharing, justice, and equality. It is to introduce Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to them in ways that touch their hearts and bring tears to their eyes. It is about winning hearts, not arguments. It's about dialogue, not debate. It's about collaboration, not competition. It's about presenting to them the beauty of the Islamic way in all that we say and do, in our spaces, both public and private, which will attract them and change their opinions. It's about educating the ignorant and opening the eyes of the blindfolded. Today, the youth of this masjid are going to have a unique opportunity to do that. In Vermont, where we are all going for a weekend, whether we leave that place with people being influenced by Islam, positively or negatively, depends on us. Keep that in mind. It's not an opportunity to have fun, it's an opportunity to change hearts. Imam Az-Zuhri rahmatullah alayhi, the great muhaddith and the teacher of Imam Malik bin Anas rahmatullah alayhi, said that Islam spread the fastest after Fatah Makkah because for the first time the non-Muslim was able to see the life of an ordinary Muslim. He's not talking about the life of the great Sahaba or Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Ordinary Muslim. He said for the first time the non-Muslim was able to see the life of an ordinary Muslim up close. People came into Islam not for wealth and power or because of complex theological debates or because they were forced, but because they were impressed with the grace and harmony and tranquility in the life of the ordinary Muslim. I asked myself, what has changed? How is it that we live among non-Muslims? We enjoy all the benefits of their societies and systems, yet what do we do to win hearts? This must be a conscious effort on our part, a part of our normal behavior, a part of our conscious training of our children and those in our circle of influence. I keep giving you metrics so you can measure it for yourself. You don't have to answer me, but how many of you know the name of your non-Muslim neighbor? Just the name. I remind myself anew that we must build bridges, not walls. For that, it is essential to monitor our conversations, especially our internal conversations when we speak to ourselves. Do you hear the voice of division or joining? If you think and speak about people disparagingly, it becomes impossible to respect them and their ways. Remember that there is much good in everyone, huge amounts of good. There will be places and points of disagreement, but those must not become triggers to trash everything. When we do that, we choose to become ignorant bigots, just like those we criticize for trashing us and our religion and our culture. In conclusion, I want to point out that exclusivity comes at a price which is always paid by the minority. The result is isolation, suspicion, othering, and demonization, which in terms of stress can result in violence against us. Participation is critical to survival, and in a country where you can do that with total freedom while retaining your culture and religious norms, it is essential to participate or risk others deciding our fate. It is essential to participate in society and become valuable and irreplaceable. We have a religion which is relevant for all times, which promotes all that is wholesome and good and prohibits all that is destructive and toxic. Islam came to change our focus and to guide us to the truth that in the end, we will pay for what we did or chose not to do. The mindset we need to create is to move from what can I get out of society to what can I contribute to society. Because return is proportionate to contribution, not to consumption. I remind myself anew that when we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Jalla Jalaluhu, we will not be asked what happened. We will be asked, what did you do? It is for that day that we must prepare ourselves, and that day must be our focus. Before I end, I request you to make dua for the mother of our Sheikh, Mukhtar al-Maghrawi, Hafizahullah. His mother passed away. I was thinking to myself that if I wanted to see an example of somebody who created a stream of goodness for herself, it is this wonderful lady. Imagine she's with Allah and the sadaqah jariyah that she has created Only one of them is Mukhtar al-Naghri, Hafizullah. And thanks to his work and thanks to all those who are introduced to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through him, all of that will go into our grave. All of that is in our record. Allahumma aghfir li ummina, Allahumma aghfir laha warhamha wa'afiha wa'afu anha wa akrim nuzulaha wa wassi' mudkhalaha واغسلها بالماء والثلج والبرد ونقها من الخطايا كما نقيت الثوب الأبيض من الدنس اللهم أدخلها في جنة الفردوس الأعلى بغير حساب مع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. Allah bless and forgive the mother of Sheikh Mukhtar and fill her qabr with nur and grant her the highest stations of rida with you and be pleased with her and reward her in keeping with your majesty and grace. O Allah, forgive all of our elders and youngsters and all those who passed away before us. O Allah, fill their qabr with nur, forgive their sins, and raise us on the day of judgment with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his Sahaba, and give us the shade of your arsh on the day when there will be no shade except your shade. And grant us the meeting of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sallam on his house, and grant that we take the cup of Kawthar from his blessed hand, and grant that we pass over the Sirat in your protection behind him and enter Jannatul Firdaus al-Ala bi ghairi hisab. And O Allah, grant that we are given the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to sit in his presence, in his majlis, at his feet, and listen to the tilawatil Quran bi sawti Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wa sallam. And O Allah, grant us the best of the best of the best of your ni'mat, which is your didar and your ruya, and to see you, and to listen and hear your announcement that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that you will make. That, O my slaves, today I am pleased with you and I will never be displeased. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار آمين يا رب العالمين. يا عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم ادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقيموا الصلاة.